Good evening and welcome to your favorite program. I know we have not been on for the past 2 months in that I have been on vacation. And anyway, we have replayed some of your favorite programs, University of the West Indies and You. Today will be another favorite of yours. This being the third Thursday in the month of November. And we are also doing a pre-recording, but it's one that you will savor for a long time to come. I'm going to reveal who is with me. The special guest is Dr. Irving Andre. We all know this name. He's a son of the soil, and he will be spending the better part of this hour with us. Guess what? He's an alumnus of the University of the West Indies, so he has to pay homage to his university, which you may say started him off. But this is a man of many parts. And it then helps us to understand better the foundation which was laid here in Dominica with him as a young man, and then to the University of the West Indies. From there, everything spiraled into something that is incredible. He had a lecture here in October, the distinguished lecture of E.U. Libla, and he will be telling us much more that you have heard or you will be seeing now in live on TV. That is Irving Andre telling us about his books, several books that he has written. One of them is the autobiography of E.U. Libla.
I'm part of a tough, smart,
constantly evolving,
never too old to learn community of human beings.
proud of country,
Proudly Caribbean, global citizens.
with convenient access to over 400 learning programs
Delivered both online and face-to-face.
from the Caribbean's University of First Choice.
My mind,
My life.
my world of possibilities is wide open.
Call, click, or visit the UWI Open Campus.
Okay, can I choose to call you Irving?
You call me whatever you want. Felix.
Okay, I'm not going to pretend that I do not know Irving. Irving hails, you may say, from Portsmouth, and you know I'm from Portsmouth. I've never shied away from reminding persons, although I live a number of years in Roseau, I still see myself as coming from Portsmouth. Irving, welcome to this program. What we usually do is allow our guests to introduce himself or herself. So, it's all yours.
Well, Felix, it's a privilege to be here today. You've invited me, and I really appreciate the invitation. There's not much to know about me, actually. My parents come from Portsmouth and from Vacaz. My father, Ernest Andre, grew up in Portsmouth. He went to the Portsmouth Government School. He won a special scholarship in the 30s to go to the grammar school. He went to grammar school. In 1942, he sat the senior Cambridge examinations. He got a grade 2 pass. He then worked in the civil service until late 1943. He migrated to Curacao. He remained in Curacao working on the oil refinery until 1961 when he returned to Dominica. My mother was born in Vacaz. My mother worked in Vacaz. She also worked in Portsmouth. She attended the Vacaz primary school. She had to leave school somewhat early because her mother died when she was fairly young, and she had the responsibility of taking care of the youngest of the 12 children that her mother and father had. After working in Portsmouth for a few years in the 40s, she also migrated to Curacao. My parents met in Curacao and got married in Curacao. And I'm one of 5 siblings who were born in Curacao. 2 of my other siblings were born in Dominica. I obviously, as I said, I went to the Portsmouth Government School. My family migrated to Roseau in 1971. I went to Dominica Grammar School. Then on to the Sixth Form College, then to University of the West Indies, then on to Johns Hopkins, then on to law school in Toronto, and then I worked my way through the system, and I now occupy a position on the bench in Canada?
He tells you he occupies a position on the bench in Canada, and very humbly he says those things. That is your life, Irving.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. And there's much more to it. Although we should recognize his present position on the Superior Court of Ontario as a jurist, and much more will be learned about Irving. I like the part how you started, Irving, describing first your parents, because they were the ones who formed what you are, okay? And the fact that when you came from Curacao, probably you knew little English, I would think.
That's right.
It was more Paplimento. That was spoken. And I always remember your eldest brother, that is Alan. Alan and I were contemporaries, you may say, as well as Yvonne to a lesser extent. But in between there, I fitted. And Alan teaching us a lot of Paplimento. I've forgotten most of it, yes, except, you know, the invectives that I remember now, which we can't see on television. But that is it, a family that when his father returned to Portsmouth, a very good reputation in the Portsmouth community. He hasn't spoken about his grandfather, that is Irving Andre, on B Street. Right. That was, and Mrs. Andre, I always remember, very pious,
extremely so.
Very pious lady, always at church, very stately, you may say, in the Portsmouth community. And the comical thing I remember about you is playing, and Irving always liked to win. Playing pools in your grandfather's shop was an experience, eh? And he could play pools, or it was skittles or pools?
Skittles.
Skittles, not pools. Skittles, yes. And that was the community of Portsmouth then. Like myself, you left Portsmouth and you came to Roseau, yes, and then was embraced in the Goodwill community. And the fact that you went through Sifocol, it was then. It would have been then Sifocol, and some of your colleagues you can remember at the Sifocol as well as at the grammar school. What I always like to do is to get a proper background, Irving. Sure. What were your experiences at the Dominica Grammar School?
Well, I thought it was an excellent experience. At the grammar school, we lived in the grammar school hostel.
Yes.
So there were four of us, Alan, the eldest, my brothers, Ernst, who is the one.
Third, yeah.
Right, then myself and my younger brother, Lenny. Lenny turned out to be an exceptional sports person. He captained the Dominica cricket team.
Football?
No.
He played cricket too?
That's right, he played cricket. In fact, he made the Dominica under-19 cricket team.
Oh, great.
So if I recall correctly, he made the Windward Islands under-19 cricket team. Exceptional sports.
Yes.
I blundered into sports, certainly wasn't very good at it. But I had a wonderful experience at the grammar school, not necessarily because of any initiative that I took, but some of the teachers I actually had the privilege to interact with. In the later forms, I met, or I was taught by teachers, Dr. Polidor,
Dr. Polidor,
Dr. Joseph.
Joseph, yes. Yes.
She doesn't have a doctorate, but in my eyes,
yes,
she actually certainly had one.
Yes.
Because she interested me, or she
in literature.
Got me in literature.
Yeah.
I never can forget the lessons that we had with her. One book in particular, Lord of the Flies.
Lord of the Flies, yes.
How she brought it into reality that I could relate to, and so on. Very powerful. It left a very powerful impression. And I think it's in the later forms, fourth form and fifth form, that I understood to a significant degree the powerful language. We had other teachers. There's one, if I recall correctly, Miss Harris.
Miss Harris, yes.
There was.
Is that Burton? Yes.
Yes.
Before she became Harris, is that the one?
Right.
Frances
Right.
Burton, and then
yes.
Frances. Harris, yes.
Oh, very much so.
Married to Kerry Harris.
That's right. You know.
But we referred to all of them, if you recall, Irving, as Ma Joe was
right.
Josephine Joseph.
That's right.
Ma Harris.
That's right.
And Ma Polydor.
That's right.
They were like mothers, eh?
But certainly they created a powerful impression.
Yes.
Because I must say that in the earlier forms, and bear in mind that that was the context, that was the time when the Black Power influence was taking root in Dominica.
Yes.
So many of us, or certainly students such as myself, we were seduced to some degree by the rhetoric of Black Power. In fact, at one point I started referring to myself as Winshoba Wakamba. Now, please don't ask
You rename your name. You rename yourself.
What it meant, because I have absolutely no idea what it meant.
Well, I mean, it has winning in it. And as I said at the start, you love winning.
Exactly. Well, okay.
Okay.
But there was a romance to it, which I
Yes, yes.
And there was also the effect of the Rastafarian movement, Redison and so on. I certainly dabbled with some of the teachings of Rastafarianism. But my father made it clear at the time that anyone who decided to wear dreadlocks in his house...
He will cut it off.
No, must find another place to live. I didn't have that alternative. So suffice to say, I enjoy the dreadlocks from a distance.
Distance, yes. Or probably there's another way of saying you had ingrowing locks.
Exactly. Very, very nicely.
Yes,
My
yes.
locks were ingrowing.
Yes, yes.
You know. So out of that type of ferment and that type of instability in terms of ideological thinking and so on, I still developed, I immersed myself into history. I should indicate parenthetically that my father had a significant impact on my intellectual development because he brought with him, when we came to Dominica from Curacao,
Yes.
a fantastic collection of books. He had about 500-600 books. Topics ranging from history, science, philosophy, agnosticism, literature, you name it, history. And he worked at the customs and then obviously was promoted to the customs
In Roseau, yes.
And after every day of work, I remember vividly, he would retire to his room, clad in a vest, pants, short pants.
And a cigarette.
And a cigarette. And a cigarette.
Let's not forget that.
Absolutely. And he would just lie down on his bed with his back against the headrest, with a cigarette in one hand, with an ashtray next to him, reading a book.
Yeah.
And certainly that, as I said, it had a powerful impact on me. I started reading some of his books. And by the time I reached the fifth form, it was almost a fait accompli that I would be focusing on those subjects, literature, history, philosophy, and so on.
Okay.
And but that gave me the start. That was the foundation on which I built my intellectual work and so on.
Well, Irving, let me take you on that journey, and we share this common thing in the Dominica Grammar School, which I still feel proud that is the school I went to in my formative years. But to now look at the University of the West Indies, and you are a product of that. What were your experiences at the University of the West Indies?
Well,
and which one of the campuses you attended?
All right. What happened is that at the Sixth Form College, I studied English, history, and philosophy. English, history, and economics. Again, I had some exceptional teachers. Dr. Polydor, Mrs. Dorothy Levy,
yes.
Bully were some of the teachers who had a profound impact on my life. Suffice it to say, I acquitted myself fairly well in the advanced level. And then I worked at the St. Mary's Academy for 1 year. I was introduced to a number of exceptional teachers, quite frankly. But then I went to the University of the West Indies, Mona campus, Jamaica. And going to the Mona campus was almost akin to going to the promised land in terms of my intellectual development. Because one of the difficulties that I struggled with in the Sixth Form College was the dearth of intellectual material in English and history. We used to forage at the public library, and let me indicate that Mrs. Connie Williams was a significant help to me when I was trying to get information at the public library. She was an exceptional help. She would give us access to some of the books in reserves and so on.
And Connie Williams herself attended UWI.
That's right.
She's the wife of the former president who was also, I don't know if they met at UWI, but
no, that's
yes,
very helpful.
Very helpful, yes.
Literally traveled from the public library to the convent high library because and to the Dominica library, just looking for materials. So coming from that background, I entered the University of the West Indies. I should indicate that we arrived 1 month late. There was another student who was with me, a former teacher of the St. Mary's Academy called Hodge Oliver.
I know Hodge, yes. He's in Canada now.
There was a rather, well, there was some politics to the fact. There was some politics involved in the fact that I received a scholarship, a USA scholarship, if I recollect. But we were 1 month late.
Wow.
And I remember going to tutorial when, and the subject was a book which I had not received any type of exposure to. I was not privy to any of the lectures and so on. And I was literally a stranger in a strange land.
Yes.
Quite frankly. But
and having to adjust quickly.
exactly. But the Mona Library,
Yes.
I mean, there were journals, there were books, critical analysis of text and so on. And it was a harvest. And virtually every evening I would spend hours at the library going through, like a kid with a new toy, going through literary journals about some of the books that we were doing, with the result that given that voraciousness, one of the teachers, the first tutorial I did, we had to do a review of a text, and I had not attended any lectures, any tutorials, and strictly based on those materials at the UWI library. I wrote my review of the text, and my review was the only one she selected for discussion and praise, and I felt very, very touched, very vindicated. And that was the basis on which, for the 3 years I spent at Mona, I attacked literally the courses with a fierceness and determination.
So let's say literally, yes, you were transformed from coming from, as you described, the dearth in Dominica in terms of material and literature, etc., and then to go to Mona, which is you may say the bedrock of the University of West Indies. That's where it started in 1948 with some 38 or so students moving from the School of Tropical Medicine, etc. And having that experience at Mona was very crucial or critical in your development. What about the friends that you made? I mean, what happened at the University of
at the University,
West
I did
Indies?
at Irving Hall. Again, exceptional experience, as I indicated.
Did you ask for Irving Hall?
No. Irving Hall had a significant number of students from the other islands.
Islands, yes. Yeah.
But for the first time, you were interacting with students from the other islands.
Yes.
And at least in my case, I wanted to do that because I wanted to know where I am intellectually vis-a-vis students from the
other islands, yes.
So it was almost a process of self-discovery. And I felt vindicated and reassured because I realized that, look, the fact that I came from Dominica, the fact that I had to contend with limited resources, did not impede or affect my ability to compete on that level.
Yes.
And that was a very empowering realization in my life. Not only that, but I also became involved in athletics.
Okay.
Now, when I grew up, I was very thin.
Don't remind me.
They called me Megzo.
Megzo, yes.
And perhaps I never really admitted it to myself. I think I had a little complex of being this thin fellow and so on. And at the university, I started to do long distance running. And I think one of the reasons I started to do so was to overcome that psychological hurdle.
Yes.
Of being regarded
as puny, small.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so I joined the Irving Hall athletic side, and I started doing long distance running. It was an empowering experience because I didn't do too badly. I made the Irving Hall team. I specialized in 5,000 meters. I won races at the university level.
In Jamaica?
In Jamaica. There was a famous race called the Ring Road Race.
Yes.
Where the different houses, residences competed against each other. And I was on that team, of Irving Hall's team.
Yes.
We competed and won a few times and so on. So it was a very empowering experience for me, not only intellectually, but athletically. You know, I overcome, as I said, that psychological handicap I had on account of being regarded as thin and being made fun of as I grew up in Goodwill.
In Goodwill. But I'm just now just stepping back a little. You were at the grammar school, in which house?
I was in Dominica House.
Dominica House, with the yellow.
Yes,
and
that's right.
you never give them a point in long distance running? Except cross country?
I never get a point in anything. I did cross country.
Yes.
I did cross country.
Yes,
I remember that video. And I remember, you know, running the back of Palm Grove, and
yes,
Goodwill and Down Federation Drive.
Yeah.
So I did participate in cross country. But to be quite frank, to suggest that I had any success at the grammar school would be a great exaggeration.
Yes. Okay.
In fact, I made a comment somewhat facetiously when I gave the Edward Oliver LeBlanc lecture, in which I said something to the effect that I would even discuss the race I won when no one else was running. So that was the story of my athletic career at the grammar school.
That is so interesting. So you at Mona, graduated in what year?
1981.
With a degree in?
With a degree, it was English, history, and philosophy.
Philosophy,
These are the
yes.
three subjects I
Okay.
did.
And then you progressed from the University of the West Indies, your alma mater, to
Johns Hopkins University
John Hopkins.
in the United States. I received a scholarship to go to do a doctorate in history. But before I did, there's one experience I should talk about.
Yes.
I wanted to have done law. So what happened in 1981, I wrote to the government, Dominican government, asking them if they would be kind enough to
grant a
cover the
scholarship.
economic costs, and I'd pay the rest. And I'd be more than happy to be bonded upon my graduation as a lawyer. I did receive a letter from them saying that, look, we don't cover these costs. It was somewhat strange because you had St. Lucian students by the droves.
Yes.
Studying law at Mona, with the St. Lucian government covering those costs.
Yes.
And Dominica probably was one of the few islands which held that position. So I basically said, that's fine. I didn't have the resources to proceed on my own. My parents didn't have those resources. So I came back to Dominica for 1 year, and then a history teacher at Mona recommended to me, why don't you apply to do a doctorate at Johns Hopkins University? In fact, I was offered by the university to do master's degrees in English and philosophy and history at Mona. Quite frankly, I wanted to go beyond that.
Yes.
So I applied, and I got a scholarship at Johns Hopkins, and I left Dominica in 1982, headed for Johns Hopkins, where I remained for 2 years.
Yes.
I did my field examinations as a prelude to going to study, but suffice it to say that I went to Canada, where I got married to my wife. And
That's prior to getting your doctorate?
Yes,
okay.
I did complete the program.
But you're adventurous, man.
Well, absolutely. But as I said, I had two goals. I had said to myself, I will either be a history professor or a lawyer. It didn't matter which one. I will take whatever road I will have to take to achieve those goals. So when I went to Canada, I told my wife, look, I have an obligation to fulfill one of these two goals. I will have to try to get into law school. So I worked for 1 year. I did have a couple of jobs here and there. I was fired from one. But I reapplied within a year of getting of arriving in Canada. Unfortunately, I got accepted. So I went to law school in 1985 after arriving in Canada in 84.
84, 1 year after, okay. And from there, you graduated in law?
I graduated in 1988. I was called to the bar in 1990. I worked as a prosecutor for the Ministry of Labor, then as an assistant crown attorney prosecuting criminal cases, then 9 years as a criminal defense lawyer defending folks, and then in 2002 a judge pulled me aside and asked me if I had ever considered being a judge. You know, and I basically said no, quite frankly. I was having good fun But
as a prosecutor?
As a criminal defense lawyer.
Defense lawyer,
But
okay.
one of the downsides of practicing law is that it takes a toll to some degree in your family. And so I reached that stage where I had 2 daughters, and I was devoting a significant amount of time
to law
practice. I had 4 associates. So I had to make a decision whether I should continue in private practice or whether I should gravitate towards the bench.
The bench.
So after this judge planted the seeds and indicated to me, look, there's some of his colleagues will support me if I do apply. So I...
And there was a path for progression?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, okay.
So I applied, and what happened, I applied in early 1982. I was interviewed, I was told the interview went well. I came to Dominica and I said, needed to launch a book. At this time of the year.
That was the first book?
No, the first book was in 1992.
That was which one?
1992, am I right so far? Yes, the first book was In Search of Eden.
Eden, okay, yeah.
And I was appointed 10 years after.
That title,
In
yes.
Search of Eden, which I did with Gabriel Christian. And then over the next decade, I did a number of books on my own. I did a book on Dominican literature. I did a work of fiction called Zombie Wedding. I did a work of fiction based on the Canadian immigrant experience called The Island Within. So I did a few of those books during that decade between 1992 and 2002. So in 2002, I did another book, the name of which escapes me, and I came to Dominica to launch it. So when I was here, I got a frantic call from my wife who was in Canada, telling my mother to get in touch with Irving immediately because the Attorney General of Ontario wants
to talk to you.
So when I got the message, I knew that there must be good news because the only reason he could be contacting me was with respect to an appointment. If you didn't get the position, no one would be contacting you. So I finally managed, and then before I spoke to the Attorney General, Minister of Government, whom I knew, actually called me after getting my number from my wife, and he said he wanted to congratulate me first, or the first to congratulate me, and then within 15 minutes I got a call from the Attorney General who basically said to me, this is the call, the longest call he's had to make in terms of reaching someone who's been appointed to the bench.
Okay.
And basically, the court was the Ontario Court of Justice, which deals only with criminal cases, nothing else. So I did that from 2002 right up to 2012, when between those 2 dates, I decided I wanted to go back to school. I had 2 daughters, and perhaps subconsciously we are more concerned about daughters than sons, which may not necessarily be the case.
By that time, what were the ages?
My first daughter was born in 1990, the other 1993. So they were that age, 1990, 12, 9 and 12.
Yes, yes.
They were reaching the teens, which parents...
The trouble years.
Got it very potentially troubling. You know, boys started to call and all this.
Yes.
So I had always maintained the view that following or setting an example is the best instruction you can give. It's better than 1,000 lectures.
Yes.
I believe in that fervently. As I said, I was powerfully influenced by the spectacle of my father. Smoking and reading. He submitted to the Time magazine. He would get Time magazine all the time. He had submitted to the Reader's Digest.
Yes.
You know, so that just left me, it influenced me significantly. So I decided that I wanted to go back to school. Now, I indicated to you that I did not complete my doctorate in history at the Johns Hopkins University. My father was very much interested in me doing that. And I always felt that I had a responsibility to complete a doctorate.
Okay. What I'm going to do, Irving, that is all interesting stuff. You're revealing a lot of yourself to the Dominican public and the world, because this will be recorded on our YouTube. When we come back, we will talk about your other achievements in writing.
So it's not being recorded right now.
I'm part of a tough, smart,
Constantly evolving,
never too old to learn community of human beings.
proud of country,
Proudly Caribbean, global citizens.
with convenient access to over 400 learning programs
Delivered both online and face-to-face.
from the Caribbean's University of First Choice.
My mind,
My life.
my world of possibilities is wide open.
Call, click, or visit the UWI Open Campus.
So, Irving, I mean, I am just enthused sitting here listening to you, and for many reasons. I mean, you hail from Portsmouth, I will emphasize this. Even if you're born in Curacao, but of two Dominican parents, you attended the Dominica Grammar School, UWI, which is what we're doing here. We're promoting the University of the West Indies, and we can hold on to you as one of our own. But how, when you wrote your first book, how did you get into writing? What made you believe that, I mean, there was a love for literature and related fields, philosophy, as you mentioned, but what got you into determining that you want to be an author, you want to write books, instead of, like your dad, you read a lot, but you now are an author of several books. How many books to date?
I think it's...
Even those you co-authored?
17.
17, that's prolific.
Yes, but if you believe in the fragility of life and the fact that death is haunting the landscape.
Or life is a slow procession to death.
That's
Sometimes
right.
it's fast.
And will come like a thief in the night.
Night, yes.
Then the question of time has to preoccupy you to a point where the question of doing today what you can do tomorrow, is one of the most powerful forces acting upon you constantly.
Yes.
And that's basically how I see it. Coming into writing was something I had always thought about. As I said, there was a dearth of literature on Dominica, and I discovered that at the Sixth Form College.
Yes.
There was the Dominica story, which quite frankly was quite informative. But it seems to me that there were significant aspects of Dominican history which hadn't been written.
We captured this.
And it seems to me that, and yes, since then there have been a number of books written on Dominica and so on, which I would love to discuss at some point.
Yes.
Not necessarily in this interview. But I felt that it would have to take someone who was nursed and nurtured in Dominica to attempt to start reducing to writing some of the Dominican experiences. So after I went to Johns Hopkins, I was exposed to even a greater collection of literature than at the University of
The West Indies, yes.
Not only that, but someone who had been associated with for a significant period, Gabriel Christian, who had met in the Dominica Grammar School. I should indicate that before I migrated to Jamaica, Gabriel and I were involved in a study group in Roseau. We were studying the rudiments of democratic socialism. In fact, we were involved in the publication of a little newsletter called The Vanguard.
Okay.
And so I had already been exposed to writing, publishing, and so on, even before I went to the Sixth Form College.
Did you contribute to the grammar school newspaper?
The Clarion.
Clarion?
I didn't then because I had to surrender to more limited people than myself.
Okay.
But what happened is, in 1975, the Chronicle had a competition and offered monetary prizes to persons who would write essays on certain subjects. And I remember one of the subjects was the merits or demerits of socialism vis-a-vis free enterprise and so on. And I won about 2 or 3 of these articles, of these competitions. In fact, I actually wrote another article, and I had someone else claim ownership and authorship of it.
Pseudonym.
That's right. And the person won. And suffice to say, we shared the proceeds.
So you had gotten 3 prizes.
That's right.
Using your name.
That's
Irving
right.
Andre. But the 4th one, because why did you do that?
Because I felt that there would be fatigue. If another article...
Persons may not want to compete.
I felt that whoever is judging would say,
Yes.
you know what, this guy has won a few times. So I wrote the article.
Yes.
The person who submitted the article under his name is now deceased. In fact, just a couple of years ago. And it was submitted, and he won. In fact, I still have the issues of Chronicle where the winners were announced. And that person won first prize for that article.
Okay.
And he was happy enough to give me 50% of the proceeds from the project.
Fantastic. But interestingly, there used to be a competition at Independence Time where, if I recall, while at the grammar school, this fella, Dr. Joseph Emmanuel,
Joey, brilliant brother.
Yeah, Joey won a competition while at the grammar school. Yes. I think he would have been in fifth form.
Yes.
And persons like Alfred C. Levy,
a
teacher then, and several other scholars wrote. And I always remember Alfred C. Levy saying to us in a class, and he beat the graduates. That is, Joseph won that year, the essay competition for independence, or it would not have been independence or statehood or what have you in those days. That is the late 60s, early 70s, because we became independent in the 70s. Yes. So it would have been the national celebration or whatever it was called then, statehood. We were probably still singing God Save the Queen on the self-rule. So instead of winning 4 times, you did a free-pit and then you allowed somebody else.
Well, I knew I was doing something.
You became a Jane Austen.
I knew I was doing something right.
Yes,
because the mother of that individual, I'm not going to call him. A family friend.
Yes.
In fact, a family friend who was a Curso.
Yes.
One time came to our house and said, it cannot be Irving writing this. It has to be Ernest.
Their father, yes.
I didn't say anything and so on. And my mother was saying, no, it's Irving. And she said, no, that's Ernest.
Yes.
When her son won, she says, she stopped saying that.
That is, yes. So she believed persons at that age.
That's right. So she was
mature enough to write.
It cannot be Irving writing the essays. It has to be his father.
Yeah.
You know?
So you progress, Irving, to after writing your first book. I mean, you got.
What would have happened is, as I said, Gabriel, a Christian with whom I've had a long affiliation, he moved to Washington because he was going to Georgetown University, and then we rekindled our friendship, so to speak. Baltimore was about an hour's drive from Washington, so virtually every weekend I would go down to Washington and spend the weekend and so on. And on the Saturdays or Sundays, I can't remember which, probably both, we would make a pilgrimage to the Library of Congress. And we would start researching. So what happened?
So by then you had given up your interest in long distance running.
Oh, absolutely.
You would know.
Absolutely. We were focused on collecting archival information about Dominica.
Yes.
So what happened in 1992? I wrote to a number of Dominicans, prominent Dominicans, with Gabriel's approval, indicating to them that we wish to write a book on Dominica's social, political, and economic history. Here is the plan that we have. We wrote to 10 persons because I had already set out the structure of the book, the chapterization of the book. And basically I asked each person if they would be interested in writing a chapter for this book. Suffice it to say that the response was lukewarm. So I basically said to Gabriel, look, we have a choice here. We either close down the shop or we summon the courage to proceed on our own. Yeah. And that's exactly what happened. So most of the research for that first book, In Search of Eden, came from research from the Johns Hopkins University, the Library of Congress, and other sources. I should indicate when I did travel to Baltimore, I traveled with some of my own research material, which I'd gotten from the University of the West. So once we realized that that could be done, we wrote everything, we reviewed it, we edited it, which wasn't a very good idea, quite frankly.
Because you're reading your own work.
And you never edit your own work. But again, we had limited resources.
Yes.
This book was financed from our own resources. 14 of my books were financed from my own resources. We contacted a company called the Book Crafters in Virginia, and they actually printed the book for us. It was a triumph, not a financial triumph, but it was a triumph in terms of the triumph of the efforts we put into it. And that's basically...
So some of the 17 books, etc., were they edited by an independent body?
Yes, yes. I will learn from our mistakes. That has been the biggest challenge because it's very costly.
Yes.
You know, so we've had to engage the services of individuals, not professionals, but at least. But that has been the biggest challenge, just the cost, the production costs of these books, and so on. But I must say that Gabriel has a similar passion for Dominica.
And Gabriel, as we affectionately call him, he has the gift of the gab. Oh my God.
If you say so.
When he engages you in conversation, it never ends. You know? And it's always informative, yes.
So he has shared that passion. And, we have dealt with some subjects which were long regarded as taboo. For example, that book we did on the 1963 disastrous fire.
Okay. Oh yes, in the
persons who didn't want to talk to us. There were certain persons who thought that we shouldn't be talking about these things because there are powerful persons in the community who take issues. But we said it had
invoking all sorts of memories that people would like to forget. I remember you talking on that very article. But what I want to have you to focus on, Irving, because you were invited here by the University of the West Indies Open Campus, Dominica site, to talk on the topic. Edward Oliver Libla, the first premier of Dominica, and probably many persons will forget or don't know that your mother is the first cousin, I think, of Edward Oliver Libla, and your roots. I smile because I have roots in Vegas. My father was there. Yeah, so all those things, you feel good about yourself. That is evolving from that kind of background to where you are now, Irving. So it's commendable. But what I'd like you to do, you've written several autobiographies. Let us focus now on that one on Edward Oliver Libla and what he had to offer. Because people, you speak of his humility, which I know. I remember him because many of his kids were my friends. Even when they lived at the Mon, we used to visit them because my father and he were very good friends, quite close. And I always remember him with the tobacco, the pipe. That's how best I remember him. But when I served as principal of the Dominica Grammar School, the very first graduation ceremony I officiated, I spoke of one of his poems. It was Laquelle Chimè pour point.
That's right.
Yes, and I found that was very powerful in terms of the question he asked then is what really direction should Dominica take? So having given this lecture at the Fortune Hotel, the distinguished lecture, part of the series of the Dominica site, University of the West Indies, are there any things that you'd like to highlight about the man himself, Edward Oliver Libla?
Well, you've hinted at some of it. You've talked about his humility. Obviously, his promotion of indigenous expression, artistic and otherwise. The fact that he tried to engender indigenous industry. The fact that he tried to ensure that there was a national provident fund for indigent individuals. The fact that he tried to open up possibilities for higher learning for persons who had been traditionally overlooked in Dominica. The fact that he opened up opportunities for advancement in the civil service. the fact that he engendered, at least tried to, a culture of democratic governance in Dominica and by extension
The region.
The fact that he was an integrationist, he believed in regional integration. He participated in regional integration. After the collapse of the West Indies Federation in '62, he made overtures to Canada to seek some type of affiliation with Canada. Not because he had repudiated the idea of a West Indies Federation, because he felt that Dominica needs to have some type of affiliation with a country which could provide assistance in times of need.
Yes, yeah.
He didn't do so with the British because he felt that the British
Had abandoned
colonial
us.
rule had negated and aborted development in Dominica. And when these overtures were not met with welcoming arms, so to speak, he also participated in the attempt to form a federation among the so-called Little Eight, the small islands minus Trinidad and minus Jamaica. Again, when these initiatives funded in 1964, he never gave up his idea that Dominica should be part of a larger grouping. Because as you know, with Carifta, in 1970, he again tried to form some type of affiliation with Guyana. It was derisively referred to as the shark and the sardines.
But let me just interrupt you there, your train of thought. And that is what has always amazed me about Edward Oliver Libla. I was never quite sure who started the Shirtjack culture. Was it he or Burnham?
Wonderful question.
Yes.
Again, from an insular perspective, I would like to think it's him, but my instinct tells me it's Burnham.
But Burnham
he had an affinity with Burnham. Also Eugenia Charles,
yes.
Ironically, because Eugenia Charles had met Burnham in England when she studied in the 40s. And if some accounts are correct, they had some type of relationship.
Yes.
Frankly, I believe that they had. Because she's implicitly, at least, conceded that there was that type of relationship. But in any event, that's not for discussion today. But the fact of the matter, he was a nationalist in the sense that he believed that being Dominican meant something. He believed that he should not, as leader of Dominica, put up a for sale sign. You know, he believed that Dominica's natural resources should be exploited for the benefit of Dominicans. He believed that foreign ownership of Dominica should be limited. He believed that Dominicans of all stripes should have access to Dominica's beaches.
Okay. On that question, Irving, just if you would have captured that, be it in your book or in your reading, there were two institutions or organizations who wanted to set up shop in Dominica. And Libla was sometimes blamed for not having them. Was the Radio Antilles, which he had offered land in Pocassi to set up, and brewer Guinness.
Not Guinness.
Not Guinness. Heineken Beer.
St. Lucia bought that.
Yes. So,
but again, that is a reflection of his nationalism. Let's start with the Heineken Beer. Heineken Beer ended up in St. Lucia. Why? Because the St. Lucians offered many more concessions than Dominica offered. But bear in mind one thing. Edward Oliver Blanc always felt that Dominica was not for sale.
To your point, Dominic knew
that he will not give a company everything just to have that company set up shop in Dominica. So St. Lucia outbid it and ended up with Heineken and so on. Now I don't know where Heineken is now today.
It's still in St. Lucia.
Whether or not it's still in. So, you know. And secondly, with respect to Antilles, again, I can't speak to it definitively, but bear in mind, Libla is the one, under his watch, we had an indigenous radio station.
Yes.
It's under his watch. And again, it reflects the philosophy of the man, you know. He was a big proponent of the idea that these resources, these institutions should be indigenized. There should be indigenous institutions such as radio and so on and so forth. It's not by coincidence that Radio Dominica actually was treasured. And look at the programs which were instituted after the Radio Dominica came into being. Local programs.
And he had Creole, yes,
Patois
programs, yes.
Don't forget, in 1972, he commissioned the writing of a book by noted Dominican historians such as Joseph Borromi, Cecil Goodrich, who was the headmaster of Dominica.
Yes, grammar school there.
And a few others.
Yeah. Irving, there's so much more, and you're a wealth of information. In the closing minutes of the program, we will talk a little much more about that.
Wonderful. Yeah. There should be a little radio independent.
I'm part of a tough, smart,
Constantly evolving,
never too old to learn community of human beings.
proud of country,
Proudly Caribbean, global citizens.
with convenient access to over 400 learning programs
Delivered both online and face-to-face.
from the Caribbean's University of First Choice.
My mind,
My life.
my world of possibilities is wide open.
Call, click, or visit the UWI Open Campus.
So, I'm so touched because there's a wealth of knowledge about a great leader, which I think Edward Oliver Libla was. There's a little aspect I want to tell you because I think I was part of it. It would have been 1967 or thereabout.
Right.
When at the back of what is now the Roseau Health Center in the Gardens, at the back of the convent, I remember the first national show was held.
Yes.
A cultural gala.
Right.
There was also an exhibition.
Yes.
And he opened that function. Why I remember it, there was the little man called Lord Tokyo,
Yes.
won the road match with the little man doing the
With the
pumping.
pumping, yeah.
You know, and as a young boy at the grammar school and seeing that spectacular and the belly dancing, etc. I think the cultural department has done a good job since then, to keep the culture alive. But Libla was rooted in Dominican culture.
Very much
So do you want to comment on that?
Yes, and again, it reflected his upbringing. And you see, because of the lack of a road system in Dominica, there was significant isolation of the various villages and hamlets throughout Dominica, and Vickers was one of them. One of the positive effects of that relative isolation was the incubation of the cultural expression within each locality and so on. And Vickers has always been a powerful cultural center. Vickers has interacted, at least at the time, they interacted more with Guadeloupe and Martinique through the sea and the sea trading and so on. And the culture was very strong in Vickers, as in other parts of the Dominica. And Edward Oliver Leblanc was very much exposed to that and was very much obsessed with it. In fact, he delighted in a particular dance where the man would dance with the two ladies on the side and bring them up and so on.
The figure four.
That's right.
Of the quadrille. Yes.
So the suggestion of the notion then, and I should indicate parenthetically that Sissy Corder obviously did much to generate respect or engender respect.
They work synergistic.
That's right.
Yes.
You know, so coming to Roseau and occupying the reins of power, he felt that one of his major goals was to reverse that dismissive attitude which had persisted for so long towards indigenous expression.
Yes.
You know, so that was one of his main planks, you know. So he started it in 65 and then it has blossomed and look at where it has traveled, quite frankly. But that was just one component of his belief that Dominica means something. Dominica just should not be just a sales booth in some market where people come to buy things or people want to come to take things or where some aspects of Dominica should be sold. Dominica means more than that.
And there was, if I remember, there was pride in country. That is what he engendered in people. And we do have, that is at the University of West Indies Open Campus, one of the series of lectures, distinguished, is for Bernard Sorrento,
yes,
who himself hailed from
Vacas.
And so that links in with what you said, which is historically true, that Vacas had a link with Guadeloupe and Martinique, because many of the Sorrentos, they may have come from Martinique, that family, and hence that link which was established. And it was what I remember of Vacas, and you would, having gone there for summer holidays, I used to be at my grand uncle in Tobino.
Yes, Tobino.
Yes,
right.
Tobino. That's just preceding Vacas. And there, as you rightly said, Vacas had a strong cultural foundation. Well, Grand Bay also shares that.
Also had that, yes.
Yes, and probably you may say Tucarin, the North too, had a lot of cultural things. Going there for the Feast of Saint Anthony, that's where you saw Bele. And I always remember, Irving, you went to the Portsmouth Government School,
that's right,
which was our rival, the St. John's School.
Yes.
And there was along this road going up to the hospital, Pembroke Street, was a lady called Masadi. I don't know if you remember it, outside there, under where Persian Waldron home is. Yes, in that corner there. So Masadi was one who, with John Alexis in Portsmouth, taught us how to dance ballet and quadrille. And I am
so sorry you gave it up. Sorry.
Yeah, but then I remember too, Irving, that when the Queen came to Portsmouth, on Borough Square, a little boy from Vacas and one lady from Rosie Etienne from Penville. She was very tall, the little guy was short. And the movements of this guy, was very influential in understanding the culture and being part of it. So with Edward Libla, it is usually said, and probably I should raise it here, that, and I think in one of the phone-in programs to you, somebody said that he had a chip on his shoulder. In the context of, he had a disdain that was said for the mulatto of Roseau, which didn't necessarily want to go along with that little boy from Vacas and to have him as leader. I say that in the context of, I always remember Barrow being Prime Minister of Barbados.
That's right.
And when he became Prime Minister, one white Barbadian had said that a woman, that he would never put his foot on her threshold. What did Edward Oliver Libla suffer from? Coming from Vacas, okay, being very much rooted in the culture of Dominica and being exposed to the mulatto of Amoroso. Was he fighting this?
Oh, absolutely. And hence the suggestion or dismissal of him as someone with a chip on the shoulder. I think much has been made of that. I personally don't think that that was the case. The fact of the matter is this. He had understood then, as no other did, the type of dismissive attitude, the patronizing attitude exhibited by many of those who lived in Roseau, social privilege, towards persons of humbler beginnings. Look, we can't, that was very, very strong. I've spoken to a number of persons, and they've spoken in excruciating detail about that type of dismissive attitude. But bear in mind that Edward Oliver didn't attend Dominica Grammar School.
Yes.
The Dominica Grammar School was regarded as the gateway to social acceptance. So that he came with a double
the Eton of Dominica.
Exactly.
Yeah, Eton College.
You know, so he was doubly pushed from the perspective of some persons. He was from Vacas, behind the bushes, so to speak.
Behind Scott back.
That's right. He hadn't attended Dominica Grammar School.
Yes.
So he had to contend with a significant amount of resistance. And you had to imagine Edward Oliver Leblanc must have been very strong-headed to persist in the reform which he felt was his main business in governance.
For the benefit of
For
all
the benefit
Dominicans.
of all Dominicans,
Yes, yes.
building a meritocracy.
Yes.
And hence his programs of building feeder roads, of opening up educational opportunities, of opening up the civil service and so on. If that is what constitutes a chip on one's shoulder, then Edward
Let him have a big
Brown
chip.
had a tree on his shoulder.
Yes, yeah, that is amazing about the man. And I recall something raised by Lennox Honeychurch of Edward Oliver was not one who entertained bribery. That is, once some businessman came to set up business in Dominica and tried to influence him by giving him some shirts or
Yes.
some monetary, and he sent it packing.
Yes, in fact,
He did not even open it.
He allegedly told those who were courting him in that fashion that I have only one back. I don't need the multiple shirts that you're offering me. And so on.
Yes.
But again, the belief that governance had to be governed by integrity.
Yes.
You know?
So that's the elements of good governance. And I think earlier on you did make mention of his role in probably setting up what is called the OECS, which has materialized now. Irving, the hour has been well spent. I am enthused by what you have to share with us, and we hope we'll have you back on this program, the University of the West Indies and You. Thank you for
Well, thank you for inviting me. It was a wonderful occasion, and I look forward to talking to you.